Porcelain War is a documentary set in Ukraine during the war, and it showcases art as a form of resistance in a way that I've never really seen.
Наша робота у співавторстві, вона була, власне кажучи, питанням часу.
Ми звичайні люди у надзвичайній ситуації.
The film follows three artists, Slava and Anya, who are creating these porcelain figurines, Slava sculpting and Anya painting, and they're accompanied by their good friend Andrey, who is also a painter and serves as cinematographer for this documentary. I was so fortunate to be able to chat with co-director Brendan Bellomo alongside core producer Paula DuPré Pesmen, and they were able to shed some light on this project.
If you look at Anya and Slava's work, I mean, Slava is a sculptor and Anya, his wife, is a painter, and they're creating these porcelain figurines that they're decorating with what Anya calls her language, which is, brushstrokes and glaze, and these are the stories of their lives. And yet they're doing it on what are seemingly this very fragile, very small format. And as Slava says in the film, porcelain is breakable, but it can be restored. There is something eternal about it. It can be mended, it can be put back together, and in this way, it's absolutely unbreakable.
Porcelain War had its premiere back in January at Sundance. I wasn't able to catch it at the festival, unfortunately, but it had a very strong reception, both critically and with the audience. It actually won the grand jury prize for Best US Documentary Film, and everyone seemed to be talking about it. Still, despite this, distribution has been a struggle, and right now, thanks to Picture House, it has some North American distribution, but it's still seeking distribution in Europe and through streaming. One thing that struck me in this film, I mean, there are many, but the title itself seemed to be a powerful reflection on the thesis, the core messaging of the film, and Brendan Bellomo expanded on this a little bit.
And I think the title, Porcelain War, it's this combination of two things that seem like they don't go together. That something very small and it's seemingly destroyable can stand up against conflict. It can stand up against what is a genocidal war, where museums and universities were destroyed and artists were killed, and yet they're making new work. And even though they're doing it on this small format, it's going to be on the big screen. It's going to go into audiences' hearts. It's going to give them a new perspective. And so this title, which came from one of our amazing producers, Aniela, it just perfectly resonated with everybody. And even in its translation into Ukrainian, it perfectly resonated with Slava and Anya. And they felt that it just embodied their spirit and what they do in their art.
From the opening shots of this film, you are brought into a sense of stillness and calmness. There is the use of some macro videography, emphasizing the little details within nature, and seemingly without warning, we are met with a very quick, abrupt cut to chaos, destruction, violence, and buildings that have turned into rubble. This juxtaposition, this explicit, clear, direct contrast is evident throughout the entirety of the runtime. And it's not just through the use of very jarring cuts, but this juxtaposition is actually held within the frame. Quite often, art is put at the forefront, not just metaphorically, but literally in the foreground of the frame. We have things of nature or porcelain figurines, and then in the background, we have violence and destruction that essentially reinforces the ethos, the messaging of Porcelain War. These artists tend to hold these shots where the contrast is undeniable, it's inescapable, and we're forced to reckon with this man-made construct, this man-made imposition of violence against art and beauty.
In the same way that the war came to Ukraine. This is a peaceful, democratic nation that was unpromptedly invaded. And when we started to first receive the footage, the first roll of film was focused on nature, on beauty, on inspiration. And immediately there was destruction, there was shelling, there was wreckage, and you go from one shot to the next. And when you're seeing this is the raw footage that's coming in, it's not an editorial choice. It's not something that any of these people wanted or asked for. They are being subjected to this situation. And then as artists, and as Ukrainians, they're saying, no, we're going to live our lives, we're going to keep creating. And then it would shuffle back to finding inspiration, going out to look at the color of the fall leaves. And yet when you arrive at a river, Slava would have to demine it before they could even go and film. And so this act of defiance was, in doing that, came as a response to an imposed juxtaposition in their lives. And so the film is merely reflecting that in its form.
These themes are reinforced through the music here. All of the music comes from the group Daka Baraka, which is a Ukrainian group incorporating some traditional Slavic folk singing in the style of white voice. And they are truly remarkable. Even if you don't watch this film, which I hope that you do, you should check out their music. They have some amazing stuff out there online, but the range that they are able to bring to complement this film is really remarkable. They create sounds of nature, of, again, calmness and stillness, and we are lulled into this false sense of security, and then they're able to hit us with these yells and screams, and the range from quiet to rage and everything in between so aptly accompanies the film. Both Brendan and Paula spoke about their importance and how they joined the project.
I was asking Slava if there was any music he felt would maybe fit or that he loved, and he said there's something that we listen to, something that Andrey even listens to while he paints, and it's Taka Braka. And he played for me Vesna, this opening song that we use in the film, and I was absolutely blown away. Not only was the lyrics, the melody, the instrumentation beautiful, it honored the nature. The members of the band create these animal sounds, these bird calls, and they're vocalists, but they're also all percussionists. And so they oscillate between, what might be a huge band of people, it's only the four of them, and yet they create this huge sound because they're switching instruments in the middle of tracks. So there was something deeply Ukrainian about it. And I thought, wow, let's try cutting a scene to this.
Yeah, as soon as we started seeing Brendan cutting to it, we started putting our heads together, like, how are we going to find this band? Because it's perfect and nothing's going to be ever even close to that for this film. And the more scenes were coming in with that music, we knew we had to find them. So we started to stalk them on social media, and they were traveling to different cities every day. And we were able to do a Zoom call with the manager, and Danielle and I were on the Zoom at 6 in the morning. And she said she was going to send us all the music, their full library, even music that wasn't released
Wow.
yet. And anything we could send to them, they were going to donate to help musicians and their families who are fighting. So that's what happened. We did license the music for the entire film, and it really is a character in the film. It's, to me, it feels like a character, and they were able to help other musicians who were fighting.
Really, what this film does throughout is showcase art as a form of resistance. The artists in the film talk quite openly about attempts to kill the artist. And when art is killed, when the artist is killed, the people die with it. The culture dies as well. Art is not something that is secondary. Art is something that is so truly intrinsic to being human, and it brings a group of people together like nothing else really can. So part of this war is about protecting art. It's about protecting culture and trying, despite everything that these three face, to continue creating. It's important to note that these three are in Ukraine. They are near the front line. Slava is training civilians to fight, part of a unit of civilians that are actively fighting in this war. These three are being exposed directly to the violence, and yet, despite this, they continue to create. We see the art obviously through these beautiful porcelain figurines, but we also see art through the music, through the cinematography from Andrey, and there's an addition of some animation from a Polish studio, which is quite remarkable in its thoughtfulness and intentionality. And Brendan talked about bringing them on board and how they stayed true to Anya's paintings.
Blue Studios is really a collective of animators in Warsaw, Poland, and they felt so tied to Ukraine, such a kinship with them because they'd had this common experience of Russian oppression in their past. They worked for a year to create these three animations that we have in the film, and they studied in order to be able to do this 20 years of Anya's work. They looked at photographs of other figurines that she'd done so that if they drew an antenna on a small bug, it would be the right shape.
Wow.
Match Anya's work. And they created 7,000 hand-drawn frames of animation, and we mapped these onto the glaze of the figurines. And it was an absolutely, miraculous collaborative project. It was artists from one country helping another and just kind of dissolving these borders into this one simultaneous collaboration.
Really, the art in this film is not simply incredible, it's almost impossible. This is a film that should probably not have been made. These are first time filmmakers, never having shot a film, and they're receiving training from Brendan 6,000 miles away. It's a pretty amazing story. He sent equipment along with aid. Every time they sent equipment, they sent aid to support as well. But he would have the same piece of equipment that they would have, and he would kind of set up an impromptu film school, teaching them how to best use this filmmaking gear. But what shines through, I suppose, is the universality of the artist. Yes, they have not made a film before, but they have been making art for many, many years. Producer Paula DuPré Pesmen expanded on this kind of sense of collaboration versus a director-subject relationship.
Slava talks a lot about how they don't go away to war there. It's actually at their doorstep. It's right outside their window. So that was another challenge, right? They were in a war zone and trying to protect their homes and their families and their lives and their culture every day, while we were also trying to empower them to make a film. And their bravery was just astonishing. They were always willing to take the camera and go wherever they went. And they cared about capturing everything they saw around them. So Slava shared like every flower, every butterfly, every human, even themselves that they were filming. They shot it as though it could be the last of their existence.
Porcelain War, admittedly, is a bit uneven. It doesn't always flow naturally, and that's been some of the critiques that have been levied against the project. But to Brendan's point from earlier, this lack of flow, this unevenness is forced upon our artists. The structure of the film is simply a reflection of the reality that they are living through. They did not choose to enter this war, and they do not choose the violence that approaches their doorstep every single day. The film and its cuts between beauty and horror are simply an extension of their lives. This documentary is not contrived, nor is it manufactured. These are real people living through a real war. Before I let Brendan and Paula go, I had to ask where Slava, Anya, and Andrey are now, and he talked about their relationship and whether or not they're still in Ukraine.
We met for the first time in person at Sundance in Park City, Utah. They stepped off the plane and we hugged for the very first time, even after having made this entire film together. And it was incredible because by telling their story, Andrey and his wife and daughters, who he hadn't seen in so long, were able to be together and to witness this film with audiences and to see their joy, their tears, their laughter, them standing ovation in the theater. It was remarkable. And yet they are still dealing with the war. While Anya and Slava have been able to be here in the United States with us, traveling with the film, Andrei is now back in Kharkiv. He's training civilians. His wife and daughters are safe in Luxembourg, but they're separated. The members of Saigon miraculously are okay, but they're still fighting, and they've gone on to even more dangerous battles than Bakhmut, which you see in the film, to Adievka, and they, you know, despite their fatigue and everything they've been through, they're continuing their resistance.
Like I said at the beginning of the video, there's been quite a bit of acclaim surrounding this documentary, but still seeking some greater distribution, thanks to Picture House for picking it up in North America. But hopefully it can receive some sort of streaming deal or a distribution in Europe so that more folks can see this project. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, then please do like it. Comment something lovely. Subscribe if you haven't. And then when I post another video, please watch that one as well. Cheers.